Good evening, our wonderful listeners. Welcome to Roleplay Life podcast. Today's podcast is a little bit different than last week, but not too much different. Last week was much more about a game review, a video game review, and this week it's the exact same.
Well, we are talking about a board game as well.
Yeah. I am also reviewing that one video game that I will mention. Don't forget, it's going to be reviewed badly, but
calling mine a review is not strictly true. But when we get there, we'll get there.
Yeah. So you should already know who we are, given this is episode 4. And if you started episode 4, then welcome. Why don't you start with episode 1? Just
go back a bit.
Yeah, just go back a bit.
There's a lot of free time in the world these days. You can catch up pretty quick at episode 4. It's not like Critical Role, who's now got more footage, I suppose. There's more hours of Critical Role than there is 30 years of The Simpsons. So,
wow. I can imagine, though, because each session ran weekly. It's 4 hours.
Yeah.
So, anyway, we'll I'm sure we'll discuss that shortly. But we digress, and that is the point of this podcast.
We should just be called Digression Life. We just divert every time and just move along.
And it's not even all about games. It's the worst thing. But
that's the best bit.
We'll quickly do the introductions. So if you don't already know, my name is Dan Glickman, and I am the host, the MC for the evening. On my left or right, as I'm looking at it right now, is young Gareth. Nice try, John. Nice try. So we have Gareth there, who is, you might recognise, sporting both a new microphone and a new webcam. I'm sure we might touch on that
the potato fields.
Yeah, and he's got a little bit of mood lighting in the background. And then, last but certainly not least, we have the wonderful John. So hello, John.
That might be the first time anyone's ever called me wonderful. I will take
John.
That. Yeah, well, we've got to look out for each other on this podcast. Okay. And
some of us less than others.
How well? I'm saying nothing. And on this podcast, we each have 2 topics to talk about this time, where we're mixing things up.
So 1.5. 1.5.
1.5 for you. Yeah. I mean, I'm barely going to touch on one topic except events, because why not use the podcast for venting? And
turn to the dark side.
Yeah. So let's start off with my topics, and then I'm going to go around each one because we do have 2. So I'm going to spend 5 minutes slating No Man's Sky.
I mean, you don't have to tell me this already. So is this day 1 No Man's? Me and John know the story here, but I feel that before me and John interject further, Dan should tell us about his weekend with No Man's Sky.
Yes. So No Man's Sky is the first topic, and I will go into another one shortly. But No Man's Sky, I thought, at the end of the last podcast, I thought to myself, you know what? I've not played that game in a while, and it got an update. I've not played it since April, and it got an update, and you could be like mechs and stuff like that. I was like, yes, I'm down for this. And so spent 6 hours this weekend. First tried to load the game. It loaded a brand new world, and then received a graphical glitch that made everything either unplayable or unviewable. I missed entire mountains, and when you're in a ship that crashes into things, missing mountains isn't ideal. And then when I reloaded, I received no graphical glitches, but instead, or none of the standard graphical glitches, and instead received a text glitch, which meant that I couldn't read any of the menus, any of the things that it was showing me. Like, if I didn't know the controls, I would have had no idea. Perfect. And so I spent a good 2 hours researching how to do this. This was Saturday, I was researching what to do, and it said, you need to clear this cache, you need to clear this graphics caching and let it re-download, and then you need to make sure that Steam has double-checked and verified the integrity. And I was like, okay, perfect. Okay, I'll do that. And it worked for about 20 minutes. And then I got in my ship again, went to fly off, and the graphic glitch I don't know what it is. I assumed that it's loading of an instance. I decided, let's not give him the graphics again. And that was my Saturday. I was very frustrated and ended up just rage quitting No Man's Sky. Then Sunday, the re-download.
The re-download. That tells you something.
Yes.
It's good. It's good when your weekend disappointment, has its own sequel on the following day.
Yeah, it is a sequel in so many awful ways.
No Man's Sky sequel, Electric Boogaloo.
Yeah. Ooh, no.
No Man's Skies 2, Dan's tears.
Yeah.
It was my tears. I can honestly, well, not tears, but I had to rage quit the internet that day, and Gareth and John can confirm. That's also why the podcast did go up late, episode 3. Apologies for our listeners, our avid listeners. Apparently, we are getting a few listeners, regular listeners. That's great. And John, you're about to ask me a question.
Yeah. Are you using NVIDIA or AMD for your graphics provider?
NVIDIA.
Good. That was
and
going to
I
go
also
badly the other way.
But I just want to finish off just quickly the No Man's Sky. I've re-downloaded it. It worked for about 30 minutes, and then the graphical glitch occurred again. So my next step, I have done basically Hello Games. They are very helpful in their support, and I've done each step that's listed. My final step is contact our Zendesk, our service desk. So that will be my next step at the weekend to tell them about all the problems I've had.
Can you do me a favour if you speak to one of their advisors? And I'm going to apologise for anyone on audio. When they say hello, can you either queue up or do the following sound effect? Joe Danger!
Okay.
Which is one of their old video games, which my ex was mad about, and my son used to play when he was 2, and it's kind of like a side-scrolling Tony Hawk's on a motorbike, I suppose. Okay. So you can either win by getting the best time, doing the most stunts, or like collecting stars. So there's like a couple of little things in it. But no one talks about Joe Danger, and it's sad.
Yeah, well.
Anyway, Zendesk, and that's what you need to do.
Yes. Yeah. I do apologise to the listeners. That will be dropped down, so it shouldn't be as loud for you as it was for myself and John.
Yeah. Don't worry about it.
Yeah, so in essence, I spent almost 6 hours trying to play No Man's Sky. I got about 29 minutes worth of playtime in total.
Before we were coming on this, I did want to check the Reddit posts to see if anyone else was having the same issue. Because, you know, if you really want to get hate about a particular game or anything in this world, Reddit is the place to go. But I find that
Reddit is the abyss. It is the internet's personal email address. You just go there to scream into the void and have the void scream back with you.
Or if you have a podcast, you can do that instead.
Yeah, exactly. That's our purpose. My original topic was No Man's Sky. That has been kiboshed. It was kiboshed after hour 6, and I then took a break from the internet, except to watch a single YouTube video, which was to pick up. I was taking a break from the internet because I was fuming at my PC because I'm at that point now where I could not find the same problem. I was like, it's my PC.
Wait.
I was like, I don't want to take it apart. I've just upgraded the RAM to it, and I'm like.
So, Dan, what was the other thing you wanted to talk about tonight?
What I wanted to talk about, which is a little bit of an actual tabletop game. Can you imagine us haven't talked
in a roleplay podcast? How dare you?
I know. So the tabletop game that I wanted to discuss is called Red Dragon Inn. And so I know that neither of you have played it. It was released.
I believe you've mentioned it to us a couple of times.
Yeah, I probably trying to get you to play it with me if I'm honest.
Tabletop simulator.
Yeah. It is one of the ways it is available is a tabletop simulator, but it's also a physical game as well. And Red Dragon Inn is a 2 to 4 person, sort of like you could almost say it's like a role playing game where the aim of the game is you have a character, and your aim is to win the game as you're sat around a pub table at the Red Dragon Inn. You win the game in one of 3 ways. If a person's fortitude which is their health, meets their alcohol, which is how drunk they are. If if everyone else runs out of gold and you have gold, because gold is used in various situations, or certain win conditions on cards that have to have certain things as a requirement, and it's very character specific, and it's rarely a way used to win. And the idea behind this game is to play your cards, and it's an individual character deck. To great effect. They can do all sorts of things, and I was watching a lot of playthroughs of this. Again, I know that I've wanted you guys to play it, and so that might be one thing that we do. But I was watching it.
Sorry, Dan. I was reading up on this because I hadn't actually heard that much about the game before, and the brief synopsis says, fantasy adventurers head to the pub for a night of drinking, gambling, and fights. And I'm like, yes, that is Dan. That is Dan in a nutshell when he's role-playing. That is what he likes to do. So yes,
I was a little bit wondering if we technically played this game, Dan, when we were in Goldstream, because there was multiple weeks where it's like we've done the quest. The following week is going to be a full pub session.
Yeah, almost. If it was, I'm not going to say that I would have won over Donut, but one of us went to bed drunk that night and the other one didn't. So I'm just,
one of you got lucky that night and the other one didn't. So
well, yeah. I mean, they're straight away explicit. Come on, we'll put an explicit tag on it. But no, it basically it is a board game, and they have released 6 abutments to it. Yeah, expansions. Yeah, for it with lots of different characters, no new rule sets, and that's really important. It's always the exact same rules. It's just that the characters sometimes have new mechanics.
Okay.
So one of the mechanics, for instance, is that it's called Murtag the Blessed. And he's a knight who can deal a lot of damage to people's fortitude. That tends to be his main thing. But when he does it...
Does he buy the drinks?
No, he's blessed because his sword is actually a good spirit in disguise, or he knows it. And so every time he deals damage, he also gives them a blessing.
How does he deal damage? Aren't you supposed to be in the pub?
Yeah.
Yes. However,
that's why I was wondering, do you deal damage by just buying people the drinks?
It's a fight. So it's the fight mechanic that was mentioned. So there are things like the names of the cards are worth it just for the game itself. Some of the names of the cards, like if you're in, there's one where you're a brawler, and the fight card, so to speak, is called Take That. As in, someone's reaching across the bar and going, take that.
Yeah.
And you know, like one of them is a swashbuckler who carries around pistols, and she says, "Watch, I can shoot a coin." And then it's like the image is her flicking a coin up and then shooting you with the other one, with the other pistol. It's it's stuff like that. But that's the way you kind of deal damage. But then, as Gareth has just said, you buy drinks for your other people, and the drinks are all randomized as well. It's a drink deck, and everyone shares a drink deck. But there's things like you can draw things that restore health, maybe, or restore alcohol, coffee, something like that, or you can have things like whiskey chasers, which means that you need a whiskey and then you draw another drink so that your alcohol content just can increase. Yeah. And basically it's a sliding scale, and if your fortitude should ever meet your alcohol or cross, then you're out. And so the aim of the game is your own self-management and things like that. And there is a bit of gambling in there as well, fun gambling. You know, it's not, you don't actually have to gamble anything, you just play cards that say gambling or whatever, and cheating and things like that. But I'm selling it slightly short. Elevator pitch, drunken fighting and gambling in a roleplay setting using character decks. And it is quite, depending on who you've got.
Who's the people behind the game?
It is, I will tell you, because I did have to look this up.
Whilst you're doing that, I just wanted to say I actually watched a brief review of this game. It actually came out like a long time ago. It's not a new game.
2007. Yep.
Yeah. The other thing is, you're supposed to be. You finished your adventure and coming to the pub to have a nice
celebratory drink. Yeah.
But people, by the sounds of it, are shooting other people and hitting them with swords and like.
I mean,
I don't know. I don't know what kind of pub.
I think it's playing up on some very sort of old school fantasy tropes where everyone, once they've had a couple, is too determined to show off their martial prowess or their skills and whatnot.
All I'm saying
that's
is that
the trope that I feel. So
all I'm saying is that the local Wetherspoons that I go to,
sounds like most Wetherspoons.
Nobody's pulled a sword on me yet, or anything that. Yeah,
that's the emphasis of the word yet.
Yeah,
I remember the last time I went to a Wetherspoons, which was in Morecambe, admittedly, and I went for a family meal. This was pre-apocalypse, as I keep jokingly referring to this scenario. And we were sat. They were like, "Oh, there's 8 of you. Sit at this table." So we went and sat at the table. And Oscar my son, would have been very young. And there was 2 guys, and the guy was basically explaining how to gamble successfully on under 16 Spanish La Liga football.
Yep.
And the techniques of which to go about this. And the bit that I really loved the most was the guy was like really convinced that he knew what he was doing. And he's like, and this was the sign that did it. And he went on and he was explaining the strategies, and he's like, you look for the players And you've got to keep an eye on them. And if they get into the first team, then that's when your strategy kind of falls down, because then you need to start looking for teams that have got players that are good enough but not being picked. And he had this messed up system, and it sounded an awful lot like he just spent his time going through the stats on Football Manager. And then it's when he turned to the guy who he was teaching and he used the following sentence: "Sometimes I earn up to £60 a day." And I was like, get a job. Just get any job.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, aside from the slight detour to Morecambe, it is at the end of the day, it is a fantasy game. But yes, it was released in 2007 by Slugfest Games, and it was released physically and just hasn't really done much. But because of COVID, a lot more people are playing it and buying it and things like that. And also the advent of Tabletop Simulator. Now, Tabletop Simulator, it has an automated thing where it has all of the characters available, which is kind of why I'm trying to hook you guys into it. But and that's kind of why I happened to be watching a few playthroughs. I've wanted to play it for the longest time, and so I did an even smaller elevator pitch than you did, which is like, drunken fighting and gambling in a pub after you've done your adventures.
I would like to say that your game is slightly less complex than my game.
A little bit. Come on, I mean, you could have different characters.
Having had the chat that we had last week, though, Dan could argue that his game is mildly more interactive than your game.
Oh snap!
Last week, we were talking about the pros and cons of
13 Sentinels Aegis Rim, a visual novel for anyone who didn't
a visual novelization, and I compared it to how Fire Emblem is a narrative strapped to some tactical simulators, and asking the question is 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim a story with a tower defense game slapped in it to add interaction.
We can get into this now if you'd like. If you're finished with...
That's a direct segue. We appreciate that, Gareth.
Excellent.
It's a segue, not an attack, John. I'm just merely sort of refreshing us between the two situations.
It's a segue, not an attack. I must remember that one.
That's a good line. I like that.
Yeah.
Okay, so for anyone who didn't listen last week, 13
How dare
Sentinels... Firstly, how dare you? Secondly, 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim, its full title, is a PS4 exclusive done by Vanillaware and published by Atlas. Some weeks ago, it was actually released in Japan last year, but the game has a lot of wordage in it and has taken a long time to translate. It is a visual novel, as we mentioned, and has some tower defense and RPG elements to it. Now, the game itself is set in Japan, but it uses different times, all the way from 1945 or 44, I forget, and running all the way through into the future, way past what we are now, maybe 150 years past where we are.
Spoilers. I accidentally spoiled that for you last week, didn't I? Sorry.
Yeah. Never mind. I got there eventually. As of right now, I'm about 50.
Welcome to this is future John. This is 2150 whatever John.
Yeah. I'm about halfway through the game at this point. But the game, you are controlling one of 13 protagonists who each have their own motivations, but they ultimately believe that they are going to save the world from the Deimos. Now, the Deimos are kaiju, as they also call them, or giant monsters that are coming...
As we call them.
That are coming to destroy everybody's stuff, which is a problem, as you might imagine. And to counter that, they have created these things called Sentinels, which, kind of comes from the name. And you are tasked with using these Sentinels to destroy them with guns and fists and railguns, which are lots of fun. But the majority of the game, I know I said last week it's 60% visual novel and 40% tower defense. It's more like 80-20. There is a lot more visual novel, and I've done actually not very much tower defense actual fighting gameplay. And I am at 31% I'm a third of the way through the actual combat scenarios.
Okay.
From what I can gather, they are they are repeatable. So if you don't like the outcome of a particular fight, you can do it again. Which makes sense with the time travel dynamic anyway. So, like I said, each one of the 13 protagonists wants to stop the kaiju. They believe that what they are doing is the right way to save their timeline, save the world, and what they're doing.
Save the cheerleader.
Yeah.
Thank you, Dan. That was going through my head so bad.
Yeah. And each one of them believes that what they're doing is the right thing to do. Now, the great thing, like I said, I'm halfway through the game. I'm about 16 or 17 hours in at this point. And the great thing that the game has got me wrapped around its little fingers.
Mech-based finger. Yeah.
Yes. Is that I don't know who the bad guy is.
Oh,
I don't.
Still.
There's no direct antagonist in this game, so it has to be one of the people that you're controlling. But it damn well hasn't told me or hasn't given me enough hints
indicated
for me to be able to tell who the direct bad guy is. Now, there's a couple of people that are pushed forwards at the beginning that what they're doing is bad, and that's indicated by other people being upset with them. But later on, things get pulled back, and new twists get involved. I'm enjoying the heck out of this game. I know I said that last week, but that's continued so far, and it shows no signs of upsetting me. I am enjoying all the characters. All 13 characters are likable. That you want them to succeed, because otherwise the game wouldn't work, quite frankly. And I'm liking each and every one of them, and want them to succeed at some point. Yeah, it's done a great job of not showing its hand. I mean,
okay. I mean, can I just interject quickly from something you said last week? Because you said you only meet the Sentinels 10 through 23, so 1 through 9 are missing. And the other thing that could be interesting, especially with you saying that it's a time travel based interaction, is, and especially if we've not got no notable antagonists, because I joked maybe the villains are the missing Sentinels. However, the other thing that sounds interesting, especially when we're talking about time travel and perspectives, and I'd have to find it to share with you guys, someone found or compiled an image, and it was all the different ways artists have drawn Galactus from the Marvel comics. And someone was like, well, he always looks a little bit different in this, that, and the other. And so one of the writers for Marvel Comics gave this very intriguing answer. And he was, everybody sees, every different race that interacts with Galactus sees him differently. Like, the perspective of what race you're from changes how he is. And I thought that was such a cool idea, such a nice little twist. And especially with John saying is, maybe one of your 13 characters is the antagonist, because they all have a different, it's an intriguing sociological thing. Everyone has a different idea of what the perfect society is.
Yeah.
And all what the basis premise of everyone is they want everyone to succeed. Unfortunately, everybody looks at life in a different perspective. I always remember an old RE teacher that me and John had called Mr. Grant. And he was ill once, and the substitute we had was a gentleman called Mr. Gedge, and he was explaining this very intriguing concept, and he went, if you think of religion, and you could take any topic, but I was doing RE, said, if you think of religion as a cow in a field, and you had everybody in the world in a circle around it, everybody sees a cow, but they see a different angle of it. And that's the problem, is then, whatever the topic is, no matter what you put in the middle, the topic objectively has, like, a point.
Yeah.
However, everybody has a different point. And because of your perspective, you're not wrong. It's just a different slice of the same pie. But then he says what happens is that you have people who speak for their angle better than other angles. And then what happens is people might get in front of that person so they can have a better view, or they get behind that person in a leader context. So there's people who maybe take that concept. It's like, well, if I take your idea and elaborate on it, I can get in front of you and see your angle better. And this is where 13 Sentinels is sounding interesting, is if the narrative is got 13 people and all of them see the objective of we have to stop the Deimos, and this is the way we do it in the different time periods, and I don't know if there's time period overlaps and stuff.
Oh yeah, there's all kinds of that. Like, it's funny you mentioned Galactus, actually. So I asked each of you guys before we started if either of you had read The House of X. Now, The House of X is an X-Men comic series where it takes an interesting point of view of Moira McTaggart, who is
Charles
human.
Xavier's girlfriend is the easiest version of describing it.
Yes. Now, in this version, she is a mutant. Now, her mutant ability is that when she dies, she's reincarnated with all of the memories of her previous self. Now,
which is also the power of Kenny in South Park as well.
Sure. Okay. Anyway,
I'll go back to that in a second.
So, she lives for a long time. I can't remember how exactly, but each time that she's reincarnated, she's killed by the fact that robots take over the Earth. They're either extinct because different times of robots come to rise, or robots from an AI civilization comes from outer space, blah, 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 blah. And she's trying to figure out how to destroy the robot civilizations that happen each time she's reincarnated. And it's funny how many similarities there are between that and one of the main protagonists in this game, 13 Sentinels. Iori Fuyusaka, or Miss Morimura, because she has multiple identities in this game, is one of the main characters in this game, and she's portrayed as both a teenager and an adult. And it basically, she seems to have a lot of things going on. I'm not quite sure what yet. It hasn't been revealed, but snippets of it keep showing her as an adult and trying to basically turn things in the way of humanity at any cost. So, and there are multiple characters like this that do things at any cost. Morality doesn't matter because the ends justify the means. And that's what I'm really liking about this game. The problem I do have with the game, though, unfortunately, if it was just a visual novel at that point, I'll give it a 10 out of 10. But it does have this combat element as well, which unfortunately isn't as deep as...
It gets right in the way. That pesky
really
combat
does. So what happens is, when you complete certain sections of the visual novel game, the bit that's having me, like, you know, wrapped around its fingers and wanting me to continue, it blocks it. Certain characters won't let you progress their story any further until you set
until you do someone else's. All right.
Well, yeah, or complete combat missions. Now, these combat missions, I have had an S rank on every single one of them that I've done. They've been easy peasy, and I'm set at normal difficulty. They just seem very simplistic. I explained last week that they're a map with a road system and counters of neon blue chips for you guys and red chips for the bad guys, and everyone moves in an active time situation, and we all shoot each other, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
It's very simple.
Turn movement, yeah.
It's tower defense with the fact that you can set down sentry turrets and things like that. There is some upgrade stuff. I was hoping it would be deeper than what it ended up being. You just end up all with every single better guns, and you can enhance those guns, and that's it.
Bigger guns.
Yeah.
So, unfortunately, what probably would have been a 10 for me ends up being like an 8.5, because the combat, which is a real shame, because Vanillaware is known for having really good combat games, like Muramasa, Odin Sphere, Dragon's Crown, which, if you take away the controversy with it, is actually a very good Golden Axe type game. Like, there are combat mechanics in each of those other games. This is the first game that they've made that isn't strictly action combat based. It's a story-based visual novel, fine, but the combat is where it gets let down, which you wouldn't expect from them. So, unfortunately...
But the food brings it up a notch, is that right? Is that I have seen this again from you about the loveliness, the attractiveness of Vanillaware food, yeah.
So there's one character in particular who is a 1940s... You find this, he's like one of the first characters you can play as, so I don't think this is too spoilery. He's from the 1940s. He's an officer for the Japanese army, and he's brought forwards in time. And he's starving, and a girl takes pity on him and gives him a yakisoba pan. Now, yakisoba pan, pan is the Japanese word for bread. Yakisoba is yakisoba noodles. It's noodles in bread. It's noodles in a hot dog bun, but this guy goes, I don't like this new world, but if there's one thing that won't cheat on me, it's my yakisoba pan.
Oh my gosh.
And this guy is just obsessed with this type of food.
One dish, yeah.
Yeah, but to be fair, I showed you guys a picture the other day of some of the food that's actually on offer in this game, and I don't know if you realised, but it's not a photo. Somebody painted that. It's absolutely beautiful.
With you talking about that character's obsession with food, has anybody ever seen Blue Exorcist?
No.
It's an anime.
I think I've read the manga.
The main character, Rin, is basically the son of Satan.
Yeah.
And his mother was like the daughter of the Pope, or a Pope-like character. Because, why not? But Rin, you discover when he goes to his special school for people with special abilities, they discover he's a really good cook, and he starts doing everybody's lunches and stuff, and he does like a lot of like loads of sort of sushi and all these like really decorative little
Japan goes
bento style boxes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But the bit that's really funny is he goes into the kitchen to make the food one day, and they come to it in the morning and it's all destroyed. And it turns out that the dorms they're in, there is a cooking demon who's very upset that someone is using his kitchen. That character, the cooking demon's great, along with a two-tailed cat called Kuru.
Sure.
But going back to 13 Sentinels and mainly the Atlas connection, have you ever played any of the Blaze Blue games, John?
No, because they seem terribly incomprehensible.
Okay. Because it's funny, we keep talking about the localization, and it's got a lot. So the thing that's interesting with Blaze Blue is the entire storyline for, I think, is it Blaze Blue, and I think there's 5 to 7 extensions. I can't quite remember because it's like Street Fighter 2.
This is me shrugging for people on the audio podcast. I don't.
Yes.
But that's also the background story of that is a non-linear time story, and characters coming from different parallel and alternate dimensions.
Yeah.
Blaze Blue, if you don't want to play it, which is a 2D fighting game, the graphics are absolutely gorgeous, and they were, I think, one of the last batch of proper hand-drawn graphic games as well.
Yeah. I mean, you can tell a lot of the stuff in this game is hand-drawn as well. The character art and all the food is just wonderful to look at.
I mean, it's like looking at it, it's very visually appealing. It is. I mean, to be fair, I actually saw a comparison for Genshin Impact. I know with slightly going back there.
Yeah.
But in terms of how much time is spent on the art, I mean, Genshin Impact, yes, it's okay saying that it's a reskinned Zelda game.
Wild.
Yeah. But
the characters are
visually like incredible, isn't it? It's so much better than that game than Breath of the Wild, allegedly, if it is a reskin of that. So that's what when I've seen basically, I saw a comparison between Breath of the Wild and Genshin Impact, and then when I also saw 13 Sentinels Aegis Rim and the food, especially, I mean, it just strikes me as people have talent, and we're sat here on a podcast talking about them.
I mean, one last point I want to make before we should probably move on is that the game has influenced me to try yakisoba pan. I must find some way of making a yakisoba pan to try it out for myself to see if it is the food of the gods, as this man claims that it is.
His own ambrosia.
Yeah.
Just quickly with Blaze Blue, I'll just quickly hop back and then we'll move on. Is the narrative is really interesting because as well as being a 2D fighting game, it's actually got a story mode for every character. And the thing that's kind of cool but also annoying in it is that sometimes if you fight a character and then make a choice at the end of that fight, you sometimes get like comedy endings. So sometimes a character might have a storyline which is 12 fights, but then at the end of the 12th fight, you pick the bad ending. So like the main character Ragnar, the Blood Edge, one of his endings, or frequently like his joke is that because he's got no money, he frequently ends up getting manipulated by someone to go into a restaurant, and they then manipulate him to make him pay. And he has no money. So he's frequently a criminal for being a dine and dasher with various other characters.
If you can't see the confusion on Dan's face, I am mirroring it too. Blaze Blue has never made much sense to anyone who isn't like fully immersed in the lore.
Immersed, yeah. But it is good lore. It's just there is a lot of it.
Yeah.
Just look it up.
Let's slowly move away from Blaze, but me and you, John, we'll shuffle away.
Yes.
We'll talk. We'll start our RPG.
Me and John have already had our own private discussion about certain other fighting game communities this week. So what they would do for their specific prizes. We won't go into it.
Yeah, let's not talk about it because it wasn't a pre-approved topic, and I've not done any reading of it. But what we have done reading on. And we'll go back to John very quickly because he wanted to talk about it as well.
I will try and make it very brief, but I did play some Star Renegades, which is also an RPG. It is developed by Massive Damage and is their second game, which is very pleasing to see because the first game didn't really do much for me. But so Star Renegades is available on everything but phones. It's on PS4, Xbox, Switch and PC, which is where I'm playing it. It was free on Game Pass from the 8th of September, which was when it was released. Now, I played it and completed it on day one when it came out. It was a very good game. It's even better now, but at the time I enjoyed it and completed it. But it was the 1.0 build that was on Game Pass and had some things missing, unfortunately. So the game is a turn-based RPG with lots of borrowed mechanics from different other games. So the combat system itself, which is where most of the action takes place, is a side-on field view, a la sort of like your classic Final Fantasy sort of setting.
Okay.
And everyone takes turns in the usual fashion. The combat itself, though, is deterministic, which means that you get to know what your opponents are going to do before they do it, and you can take your turn accordingly. It's a lot like Into the Breach, which I'm not sure if you two are familiar with. It was a very popular game maybe 2 years ago now.
Is that the one where you fight an alien race called the Vec?
That sounds right. You're in mechs, surprisingly enough. I like mechs.
I think you streamed it, and only I watched. Yeah.
Thanks for that.
All right, then.
Thanks for that, Gareth.
Like that.
Yeah.
Because I remember me and you were just like swapping music through the Nightbot and stuff like that.
Yeah. Anyway, so it's a lot like that game, which was very popular. So I would imagine these guys are going, I'll have some of that. So there is also the Nemesis system makes a return here from Shadows of Mordor. So each time you defeat a lieutenant or higher ranked enemy in the robot army that you're fighting against, a new enemy will rear its head to take out your party, let's say, and it has strengths that will make it more difficult for you in future. Is
it similar to Shadow Mordor, where it's the exact same person, but they if you stab them in the eye, then they're eyeless or whatever? Is it like that?
It's not that complex, unfortunately. So this is an indie game. Like I said, this is only their second game. The game itself is like £20, I think, which is obviously indie sort of scaling here. You can't really expect them to have the same sort of budget as Shadows of Mordor to do that amount of detail. But it does borrow from that, and it takes the main part of it, which is the game sort of like learns from the way that you're playing. If you're
take the best ideas and put them together.
Yeah, if you're using one character in particular to sort of like cheese the enemy, it will try its best to try and stop that from happening.
Yeah.
So your characters are based on an overworld map that you travel through to do your battles against these robots. The robots are coming to destroy your civilization. Where have we heard that before?
Oh, just about
half an hour ago.
anything
About 10
killer
minutes
robots.
ago.
Yeah. Anyway, so you're on a planet. You get to choose your planets. You go to that planet. You run around with your little party of different people that have different classes and different abilities. Nothing
No
new
Man's
there.
Sky rip.
And after so long, your characters run out of actions that they're able to do in a given day. At which point they will set up camp. There's a little bonfire. Everyone sits around it, and we all get to know each other a little bit better.
Yeah.
Have you heard this before? It's from Darkest Dungeon. If anyone's unsure where that's from, it looks a whole lot like it. The art style isn't the same as Darkest Dungeon. It actually takes on sort of like a comic book style, sort of realistic but cartoony at the same time sort of look to it. It's very good. They've gotten some great art in this game as well. There's also a system that's used in Fire Emblem. Funnily enough, Gareth mentioned it before.
Triangle system?
No. So the characters make connections.
The support system.
The support system round the bonfire, and if their levels are high enough, they get busy and have a child.
So we're going Fire Emblem Awakening, where it was all about a little bit like Pokemon. Can we become the best genealogist to create the super child?
Yeah. So and you get to play as that particular child as a playable character on your next run through. I going back to the combat itself, actually, I missed out on something that's very important. Is that so whilst everything's deterministic, you can actually stun and break characters so they can't make their moves at all.
Okay, that's cool.
And so you can sort of like stop their turn from doing it. And at some points, some enemies will do like ultimate attacks where you're trying to break them, because if you do that, they will stop doing that ability, and on their next turn they'll use something less.
I'm sure you were playing a game with this mechanic in it earlier today. I did happen to see it pop up on Discord. Slay the Spire?
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah, me and my Slay the Spire. But yeah, I played this game on day one, completed it, and unfortunately, there was no ending sequence, and there were lots of bugs. So what would happen was I got to the end of the game, like I said, no ending sequence. There was a credit thing that got halfway through, and then the game broke and hard crashed. And then I got halfway through my second game, and the game hard locked then as well. So I left it there. I haven't actually played much of it since then. Now that the game is on 1.0.3.5 patch,
snappy title.
Yeah, I've gone back to it, and it seems a lot smoother. The game seems sorted out. If anyone is looking for a new RPG to play, I would seriously suggest checking this out. I think this is possibly one of the best RPGs of the year, and it's going under the radar because it's not from one of the big publishers.
Yeah.
It's an indie title, but it's definitely worth your time and it's definitely worth the look. So if anyone is looking for a new RPG, do it. Have a look. It can't hurt. And if you're on Game Pass, you can play it for free. So you can't say better than that.
The best value. Freemium.
Yeah.
Yeah. That has just reminded me. I'm going to play it. I downloaded an RPG a while back, and I've mentioned it to you all, but that's what I'm going to play this weekend, ready for Monday. Gordian Quest. I'm going to try out some more Gordian Quest.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that seemed quite interesting, and similar-ish, but different elements in the way it works. But yeah, no. So that was Star Renegades.
Yes.
Just quickly, John, how close is it to? Is it Wargroove that you were showing me not so long ago? That was also free on Game Pass, I believe, and that was kind of like Fire Emblems meet. Even though Fire Emblems and Advanced War are made by the same people, Intelligent Systems and Nintendo, they still have a variance in the gameplay.
Well, they're different because, like I said, they take place on a Final Fantasy style side on battle turn-based system rather than an overworld like map that everyone controls their movement that way.
Yeah.
So it is different. I would like to say quickly, I know we've been going on a little bit, but there are so many RPGs to play and so many coming up. Just quickly, obviously I'm trying to get through 13 Sentinels. Hades I really want to play and would love to talk about that on here. I just haven't had the time. Yakuza Like a Dragon is coming out in a couple of weeks. On the same day, a little game called Cyberpunk 2077 comes out.
Yeah, a month away, a month from now.
So yeah, there's lots to play.
I have multiple issues with Yakuza just quickly, but one of the other ones is loads of people. Have you seen how they're refusing to Yakuza Like a Dragon online?
No. What?
How people are refusing to it as a community. They're calling it Yakuza Lad.
What?
Like LAA Dragon D. Yakuza Lad. And at first I thought, it's really got sort of like lads on the beer banter style. That's how people are now almost legitimately calling it. A little bit like, quick aside, I showed these guys an archetype that's being released in Yu-Gi-Oh! The card game called Dual Avatar, I think it's called. And one of the cards is called like UA Fist, and the other one's like called Kukue Feet. And people in the Yu-Gi-Oh! Community are calling them either Punchy or Kicky or Handsy and Feety. So
that's fine. That's just another Boaty McBoatface situation.
Yeah.
But I actually have high hopes for Yakuza Like a Dragon. Quickly, I know I keep saying quickly, but anyway, Yakuza games.
Everything must be fast.
Okay, Yakuza games are great. I just don't like the fighting in them. I think it's very squatchy, mashy, rubbish gameplay. The stories are the best part of that game. This game has turn-based combat that's in an RPG style. I think that could be good, and it would be great for me to play it.
And that has John gone for the rest of the podcast.
I'm okay.
But yeah, there's so much coming out. And there's so many games. I mean, there's games we don't even touch on because, I mean, they don't tend to fall within our brackets. But one that I've watched a lot of people play at the minute, a lot of friends play, Phasmophobia. Has anyone heard of that?
I have heard of that.
Yeah, the ghost hunting game. I mean, let's swerve that because I'm not a fan of horror games on the best of days.
I can't play horror games. I get too invested. Like, the number of times I tried to stream Dead Space 1 and just couldn't do it. I got, like, that opening scene where the alien like rips open the door and is about like this far away from your face with its tentacle like appendages to rip your face off. And it's just like, it's too tense. I can't do it.
I think though that's why people love those streams though, is when like people legitimately just like lose it and they can't interact with it. Apparently one of the most terrifying thing is it Dead Space VR.
Oh God, no, no.
Well, has anyone? And it's like if you've not got a VR kit, obviously don't go and spend £500 to £900 on a VR kit because you're probably going to play 2 games. The Resident Evil 7 VR demo.
Yep.
So my sister's boyfriend treated himself with some inheritance money to a VR set. And he got that, and he just took the headset off, put it down. The PlayStation was still on, and the game was still running. He just went, nope.
Well, that's part of the reason why it was quite an interesting segue there, because Phasmophobia does have an inbuilt VR function.
Really?
God. And part of it involves setting up your microphone. So, relevant to VR, setting up your microphone, right, to talk to the ghosts.
Nope.
Okay.
I'm out.
And they talk back.
No, thank you.
And then there's times.
Is it wrong in my head that someone should play this game and they should role play the position as a job advisor? It's like, have you ever considered, instead of using your paranormal behavior for terror, that maybe you could go into the service industry? You know, especially like the world situation, you're already dead, so we don't have to worry about infection. Maybe you could work in hotels, maybe give them a clean. No one has to worry about that. You know, lots of places need wiping down and disinfecting
you
on a
would have died
position.
about 10 seconds into that pitch, because that is the unfortunate other thing, is that when basically, and I can't even imagine playing this in VR, I hate to even watch it, let alone play it, is sometimes you'll be just doing your tasks. Maybe you've got to take a picture of some dirty water or try and find a
Is this Among Us suddenly?
No, it's not. No.
Doing your tasks.
There is multiplayer in it, though, isn't there?
There is multiplayer up to 4 people.
Does anyone
maybe
control
you're doing
the
your
ghosts?
tasks. No.
Okay, so it's like a Left 4 Dead sort of situation.
Very similar, except that you cannot kill the ghost.
No,
you just have to know what type of ghost it is and get do the tasks. But you could be in the middle of doing a task, you just hear the bass drop and then a scream, and you know that you're being hunted.
No,
and unfortunately, I was watching a stream where someone had just walked out of a bedroom, was walking down a corridor, heard this sound, and went, "Oh, quick! I best jump into this wardrobe." Jumps into this wardrobe, and there was another body in there. And he was like, and the guy's name was like, "Oh, hey, Kane, hey, Kane," and he went, "Kane." Kane was already dead. He'd been killed, and I just went, "Nope, see you later." I just can't do it.
No.
But yeah, so apologies. Slight aside, we do talk about other games. It's not all RPGs, honest. But now, unfortunately, we're about to talk about another RPG with Gareth.
Well, yeah. So I think I even commented, like, I played 30 minutes of Crown Trick, and after that 30 minutes, I was like, you know what, I need to write down some initial ideas and some thoughts. And then I was like, I feel like I'm writing a review rather than writing notes. So I'm going to try and bet my best to, without referring to the 2 pages of text that I bombarded myself with, I want to talk about it very quickly. So Crown Trick, it has been released by Team 17. It was released last week on Steam. And it is a roguelike RPG. You play a character called Ellie, who wakes up in the Nightmare Realm. And when you leave the throne that you wake up from and you go into the next room, you see a piece of fancy headwear, which is a crown with a single eyeball in it. And it introduces yourself as a omniscient character of this realm, but it can't. It needs someone's assistance to help tame the Nightmare Realm.
Please tell me she used Identify on it before she picked it up.
No, strangely enough. So you use the crown, and the crown. So one of the things that drew me to the game is I watched the gameplay trail, and it looked cool. The artwork for me reminded me very much of Disney's Gravity Falls, which I always describe to people as Twin Peaks for kids, because there is an awful lot of like occult and subversive narrative use in that TV show. I believe it's Gravity Falls is done by a guy called Alex Hirsch, and it's a great series.
Yep.
And the artwork, so the crown looks a little bit like the one-eyed villain from Gravity Falls. And when I was watching the trailer for Crown Trick, you see this young girl wake up in a throne, and then she's got a magic crown. And at first, I thought, oh, you play like a princess who's woken up in the Nightmare Realm. But Ellie is not a princess; she's just a child wearing a crown. And you then discover that someone attempted a ritual in the Nightmare Realm to take its power, but it was incomplete. And because it was incomplete, you've been drawn into the world. And in the trail for the game, you see an old woman who reminded me very much of Zebaba from Spirited Away, kind of looking character.
So she's got a giant head.
And I started to wonder if this was going to be like an allegory of coming to age. If she was already a princess before she woke up, is this the pressure of like, you know, one day I'm going to be the queen and I might rule this, I'm going to rule a kingdom, and it's going to be all these problems and all these situations that I've never experienced.
Mighty queen.
But it started giving me all these like ideas and notions and concepts, and I started playing the game. And the game is, I believe me and John had a quick chat about this, and it's like WeGo turn motion. So when you move in the Nightmare Realm moves as well.
Whoa.
So, it's actually very unlike other games which use a Wii move system. It's very like, I'm an idiot at these kind of games, and it made a lot of sense to me. And then you end up with a weapon system as you go through the dungeons, which are procedurally created. You have situations where you can rescue people that have been trapped in the Nightmare Realm. So when you go back to what's called the Reincarnation Palace, which is when you die, you go back to this room and you can go back through the level. The people that you rescue go back to there, so you end up with your own series of shops. So the first person you rescue is an alchemist. The second person you rescue is a banker, weirdly enough. And you end up with all these systems. And as we joked, as I got a little bit further on, there's gacha machines for spending the gold that you find inside the world. So you've got gold for buying weapons and potions and items. And then you have soul stones, which help you upgrade your shops in the Reincarnation Palace. The weapons are very interesting. So it's a grid-based system in movement. So the weakest weapon, I suppose you'd describe it, is the knife, which is only attacks the square in front of you. And weapons either do physical damage or spell SP, special damage. And each different weapon has a different specification. So, like, you've got pistols, which do, like, a couple of squares in front of you. I currently favour the axe as a beginner because it attacks every square around you. So you attack the 8 squares around. And you move through the game.
Gareth, just going back to the movement for a sec. So the game this mostly resembles to me is Crypt of the Necrodancer. Now, which is a very popular game from, like, I think it's 2 years ago maybe. And that game relies on you moving to the beat of the music. Now, does this game have that as well, or is that
there is no music in this world at all?
Okay.
So as you move along, there is no music. So it's sound effects. If there is music, it's very slight and very atmospheric, but you don't actually move with the music.
Right.
So the main mechanics you've got, your movement, you have, if you, because I play on the joypad, if you press down on the right thumbstick, you can skip a turn. So if you're in a situation where there's combat, certain enemies, you can watch their actions and patterns to see how they interact.
Yeah.
There's some great names, as I showed in at the D&D WhatsApp group, where you can kill like mini bosses, which are called familiars. And one of the first ones you kill is a chicken that looks like a highwayman from fantasy novels, and it's called the Swashbuckler.
Good name, strong name.
There's something else with that name though that just no, I'm not
sure. Is it the cuckold relation?
It is slightly, yeah. I mean, you've just mentioned that word now, so that means that we're back in the wrong roleplay section of the Apple Podcast. That's it now. Explicit, straight in there.
Yep.
But so there was one thing that I forgot because it throws to you like the other little system where you've got magical shoes called the blink boots, which basically allow you to move in a grid pattern, and you can use it to try and escape and manipulate your space against your enemies, or if your enemy's got an AoE style attack.
Me and John are nodding for different reasons here.
League of Legends.
League of Legends.
Press F for respect.
Yeah.
But I think the systems are very simple. Like even like an idiot like me was picking up. I'm sure these like John and Dan would probably pick this up and properly smash through it really quickly. But for me, it's got like the right challenge level to keep me interested and keep me going. My only downside is the narrative isn't explained as you progress through the game.
Yeah, I think
it's explained to you. You after you kill bosses, you find notes, and that's a little bit disappointing because of it'd be nice to find little moments. Although I will quickly interject before I know John wants to say something. You find these like green cubes through the dungeon, and I'm not sure if I sent you guys a photo, but you talk to it, and one of the ones that got me was. And it made me chuckle, is like the artwork is like sort of like a little comic strip art, and it shows like a TV screen with like a Spectrum style joystick and stuff. And it's like you wake up in a reality and you hear someone talking to you, asking you about what kind of gamer are you, and you get these 4 options. And if you choose like I'm elite or something, then for the rest of the game you get 1 potion to top up your health for the entirety of the game, but then you get other benefits, and then you've got all the others, and then so like the higher you pick, the bigger the criteria against you is.
Please tell me one of them's called Hurt Me Plenty.
No, but one of the... It's like, I think I chose, like, because I'm new to the style of game, is I think I chose the second to the bottom, and it's like, you turn to your audience and say down the microphone, oh, I'm making an amateur gamer move. And in that case, it was, and then later on you meet Pinocchio, or like a Pinocchio allegory, and Pinocchio goes on about lying. And then you get options to say, like, oh, lying's bad, or, you know, maybe in the world it's acceptable to lie from time to time. And Pinocchio tells you that he upset a shopkeeper, and he asks you to lie on his behalf and say that Pinocchio is dead. Because he said, I bet you if you tell him I'm dead, you'll get money off. And it says, tell the shopkeeper that Pinocchio's dead, and you get 25% off at the end of level shop. Or tell him that you refuse to lie. And I was there like, it seems too good to accept the lie. So I said no. And the game was like, you may choose to regret that choice. And I was like, pardon? And it made me think an awful lot of Call of Cthulhu it's Call of Cthulhu, the RPG game. I picked it up for about £10 on PlayStation 4 around Christmas as something to do. It's not a long game, but it's quite interesting if you're into the mythos. The controls are a bit clunky, but, you know, acceptable for the £10. And in Call of Cthulhu, you make certain choices, and just in the top right-hand corner, instead of the save logo, it just goes, your actions have been noted. And you just like, when you know the Cthulhu mythos, you're like, oh my God, don't hurt me.
That comes from something a little bit before that, which is the age-old meme, before we go over to John, of X will remember this.
Yeah.
That's always the RPG meme for that,
the Walking Dead games, right?
It's Wolf, what they called? No.
Telltale Games.
Telltale Games.
Yes, that's it.
The Borderland games, yeah.
I was just saying that you kind of disappointed with the lore being dished out to you, like, through notes that you find after defeating bosses. I can't imagine how upsetting it must have been for those guys to come out at the same time as like Hades 1.0, and just seeing like how they've implemented their lore system, which is like, I don't know how many lines of dialogue it is. That's something monumental. But every time, like, they're both, because Crown Tricks is a run-based game, isn't it? As well.
Yeah.
So it's the same as Hades. Well, I obviously haven't played Hades yet. I really want to because I hear great things. And one of the things that people tell you is that the lore is dished out to you in a really, really good way. Like, if you get defeated by a boss the last time on your last run, the boss will say something to you when you meet it next time, saying like, I'm going to kill you again. Or, you know, you were pathetic against me last time. You're going to, you know,
but that's a little bit like we were talking about Doki Doki Literature Club last time.
Yeah, there is some of that, but the thing that, because a lot of games do that now, because it's good immersion for you, especially in games that lack immersion on the most part, like run-based games like these. It's just the number of lines that are actually in this. Like, apparently people who have played the game like 40 or 50 runs haven't heard duplicate dialogue like in that amount of runs. Like it I mean, I'll know more as I play it, but it's exciting to hear that, like, because like I said in last week, story games are what is important to me. That's why I never completed Dead Cells, because I eventually hit a wall on that game and just like fell off. But if there's something there that keeps you going back, like even if it's just a little bit of line of dialogue from a character saying, "I'm gonna smash you into the dirt," or, you know, congratulations, got past me this time, you weakling. Or whatever.
On the Dead Cells now, how did you feel about the narrative use in a game like Hollow Knight?
I fell off that game too. I don't know.
I'll explain to you why I fell off Hollow Knight. Is I ended up playing it. I bought it when the first lockdown happened in the United Kingdom, and I was really into it. But then when I had to go back to work temporarily before getting locked down again, I was like, I forgot where I was going and what I was doing. I feel that Hollow Knight is a game where you've got to really like sit with it and go through it. And I just basically was like, I couldn't remember which way was which.
Yeah.
And I was like, do I look at a guide or like? And then I was like, well, if looking at a guide, how's that going to help me? Because it turned out I looked at the IGN guide and I actually already killed some of the bosses that it said to do much later on. And I was like, oh.
Yeah, I think one of the problems that game had was it was quite difficult to get from different places onto the map. It took too long to get from one end of the map to the other, and exploring the map itself wasn't much fun. But anyway, Gareth, didn't you want to talk about Team 17?
Team 17. Well, Team 17 are the people behind Crown Trick. And at the moment, the thing, I was actually trying to listen to it throughout the week, is Team 17, basically their business model is they are almost like a parent company to indie developers. And this is how they're maintaining their sustainability. So Crown Trick is, I've not got the note up, but it is another developer within Team 17, famous for ruining mine and John's teenage years playing the video game Worms.
Yep.
Who also at the time worked with Prognosis. And the whole thing with Team 17 is that they've been doing all these little releases, and I think they've been doing some. I'm not claiming them to be the height of originality, but I think they do some gorgeous looking games. I remember through lockdown playing the demo for Ageless, where you play a character who her special power is that when she touches things, you can either make it older or younger. And you can take, regardless of which way you develop it, you take power from it, and then you can generate a bow and arrow to fire, and you can slow down time, speed up time. So it's a little bit like Limbo and such.
Can I make my stomach muscles younger, please?
I wish I could do the same.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's plants and animals, not humans.
Damn.
Sorry.
But basically, you go to. I wish I could remember the name of the city, and they're like, "Oh, you've got to prove that you're worthy of your power," and you literally don't even go to the. You're just going to the city, and one of the beings from this city says, "Oh no, you're selfish, and you don't use your power for the world like you're supposed to," and it decides it's going to chase you into the city, and that was like. Look, you had to be able to take all the skills that you'd learned throughout the level and put them together, and it was just crazy. Like when you got it, it was like timing based. There's a little bit of rhythm based, and you had to do a little bit of. I'll use the term grinding loosely. You had to learn the screens a couple of times for the chase because it was just crazy. But it felt intense, and it was really, I really enjoyed that. And I showed John they're going to be releasing a game next year called Unliving, which John said reminded him of Plants vs. Zombies. To me, the narrative in the trailer for that game reminded me of Legacy of Kain from the PlayStation 1.
Classic game.
Which was a great game.
Yeah.
I think you had Soul Reaver, which was the second one.
I had the first one as well. I'm pretty sure I did.
Yeah, I definitely I had the first one. So whether you loaned it off me, because that's what we did when we were kids.
Yep.
And that had some great narrative in it as well. Especially like do you choose to heal the land or do you choose to take from the land at the end is really really good. And that's also got quite an interesting narrative for why you're put in the situation that you are put in, and you don't even understand which character does it until very late on into the game as well.
Well, you know what else Team 17 is responsible for at the minute as well? Obviously, you've already mentioned Worms.
Overcooked.
Well, I was going to mention Golf with Your Friends.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's
secretly like one of the streaming games of like the past couple of years, isn't it?
I know, it really is. Like it's just a quick and easy thing you can throw on. 9, 18 holes, whatever. The Escapists.
Yeah, the Survivalist looks interesting as well.
The Survivalist does look interesting.
So speaking of Team 17, like it does seem like in the past couple of years they've actually stepped up the number of games that they're making. And
they're basically trying to release every quarter, and they're trying to the titles that they're releasing as well. They're not just it doesn't feel like they're just pumping out games to pump out games. They're pumping out games which they feel should be out there.
I would argue that the Worms games maybe fall under that category.
Yeah. I was going to say there's definitely a sort of
like just looking through their last releases. Okay, so 25th of February this year, 28th of April this year, 19th of May this year, 11th of June, monthly. 14th of July, 28th of July, 24th of September, 9th of October, and 16th of October. That's a ramp up if I've ever seen one. Jesus. I suppose ending with Clown Trick, actually.
Yeah, Crown Trick, and Crown Trick, the other thing that they're doing that's quite interesting is if you previously bought games related to them. So, John, I got 10% off Crown Trick because I have the Ageless demo on my Steam account.
Okay.
And I think actually it might just be a generic 10% off, but it did mention, we see that you've played this game. But if you've got Darkest Dungeon, you get 20% off. I think if you've got...
Wait, is Darkest Dungeon one of those?
No, I thought
it's listed in the sales thing. So on different weeks, different games get you a different 20% off.
Oh,
yeah. Darkest Dungeon is not the same in this case, Sean. I saw the exact same thing Garrett just referred to, and I went, "It's not the same developer." That.
No.
So I have two tabs open right now. Now, Darkest Dungeon. I mean, it sounded very similar in everything but artwork. In all fairness, it was a side on, not the top down bit, but no, that's Red Hook Studios. That is.
Yeah. So Crown Trick is it's sort of pseudo isometric top down because obviously the way they do the chamber art is kind of isometric, but it's a top down thing. Going to, as John's point mentioned, different weapons can also create stuns on your opponents, including bosses. And you can create status effects. So if you have, for example, an enemy next to a barrel of water and you break the barrel of water, it will explode, causing a drench effect. Okay. Or there's oil as well. So you can if you smash a barrel of oil and then you use the fire effect from the first familiar that you kill, you can set them on fire, and obviously they take bonus damage from the oil as well.
Yeah, I've seen videos of that where you set something on fire, and because you only move when your enemies only move when you move. You can run away once you've set them on fire, and the burn damage ticks whilst you're running away.
You just see the ticks in the background, don't you, when you're running? Yeah.
I mean, one of the things that I sort of enjoyed was when you've got the blink boots and you kill the first familiar, the dragon familiar. You get a 3-space fire line, but you can also position an explosive keg. And the thing that's quite fun with that in the boss fights is that it always makes me think of when you're a child and you play TIG, and you used to end up in that position where one of you'd be on one side of the car, and you just did that. Oops, sorry, just punched my microphone. Where you just do that one thing where it's two kids trying to like finesse each other around a car on the street.
I went over the bonnet. I just F that. I'm going over the bonnet. Yeah. I'm getting you.
You saw too many 80s US crime programs. Right. Yeah.
John played the Hawaii Five-0 music in his head as he was sliding over, yelling, "Book 'em, Dano!"
Yeah. And I wasn't even alive at the time, probably.
Yeah. No. But yeah. I've really enjoyed Crown Trick. I really hope that, because I'm back at work now on Wednesday, to maybe get a couple of hours in with it to see if I can get into the third or fourth dungeon. The other thing that I found interesting is when I was finishing the second dungeon, is every time I got to the boss fight, I actually fought one of two bosses, not the same boss.
Good.
Okay.
Which was interesting. So yeah, there seems to be some little run changes and things like that.
I do like that about procedurally generated stuff. If it's the same boss, if you're just finding a different path to get to the same boss. I mean, John, Monster Train, Slay the Spire, everything we played on our own. you can't have procedurally generated and have the same boss over and over.
Yeah, I'd love to spend like we could probably do an entire episode just talking about those games, to be honest.
Yeah, no, 100%, yeah. I'd be down.
But yeah, Crown Trick and Team 17, there's a little hour presentation from the CEO, and she's explaining how independent game companies, instead of always being in direct competition with each other, they should be looking to maybe lean into each other a little bit. And the CEO was on about how, you know, she was a girl in the 80s and she was a bit of a tomboy. So for her, it was a very competitive market to get in there as a games developer.
Yeah, I can imagine.
And as she's doing the presentation, and it's almost like a franchise meeting, because she asks, like, is anybody here just doing this for a hobby? And she's like, there's a few of you. And that everyone else in the room, she's like, if for those of you are a business, then, you know, the reason I'm talking to you more sincerely is the concept of you've got to be good at what you do, because the concept of the starving artist might be a cute, dramatic narrative for a TV show, but, you know, you are a starving artist and you need to put food in your belly and pay for your bills. Yeah. And that's why at the moment Team 17 is probably killing it with the schedule, because they are looking into people who are maybe a smaller developer and they're acting as a publisher, or a smaller developer who maybe needs their experience to help them guide them through some of the game development process. And I think they seem to have found this little niche of retro style or retro looking games and branding them really well. Like The Unliving is in my Steam watch list at the moment, because I'm very intrigued to see how that develops. Especially I'm curious to see, because it's like a moving tower defense game, is how I described it to John. Or that's how it initially looked. And I'm not really into tower defense games, and it's like, is it because they've painted it in the right theme for me to be interested, or is it, you know, there's something about the gameplay and the trailer that just caught my attention? And Team 17 have done that really well a lot for myself lately. Like we were talking earlier about Larian Games, at the moment Baldur's Gate is a really big development for them. It's a huge thing, massive world, already existing fan base. They've already shown what they could do with things like Divinity. But now they're having to step it up in a different direction, slightly different. It's as one of my old co-workers used to put it, same but different. So, and we've seen, and we heard from Dan last week, some of the issues with Baldur's Gate 3, but then it's like that's still in development. So we'll see how it goes on.
Yeah.
And we'll probably come back to Baldur's Gate 3, I'm sure, in the coming time.
I believe, John, you mentioned that they had made some updates, so we'll certainly see what those updates are. You know, a grayer option to the moral dilemma that was presented previously. But yeah, so that was kind of our game review-ish. You know, we meandered amongst various games. I slighted No Man's Sky for a little bit. In all fairness, I have not yet reached out to Hello Games, which is my next step. So there might be something I'm genuinely missing. But yeah. So anyone else? Anyone else for anything? Anything else for anyone? I don't know what the saying is.
Before we end, for any more? I should probably point out that next week is half term, and there's a possibility, with everything that's going on with the apocalypse and the world ending, that hey, I might get away for a week. In which case, this won't happen, unfortunately. I will be putting up a video. My daughter and I did a quick video on some figures that are from Final Fantasy VII. Thank you, Gareth.
I think you've got your massive franchises mixed up a little there, Gareth, but it's okay. It's okay.
That's Final Fantasy VII level up music.
The battle winning theme.
Yeah.
But anyway, it doesn't matter. My daughter and I did a little video of some figures being unboxed, which I'll be putting up next week instead of the regular podcast. I will link to that. But yeah, in terms of games I'm going to be playing, by the way, in this week off, I'll be taking my 3DS with me, and I'll be playing a little-known game called Etrian Odyssey. If anyone's heard of that, that is an interesting game franchise that's only ever really been on the handheld Nintendo consoles.
Is it based on Abe's Odyssey?
No,
or Munch's Odyssey?
It's completely different.
The Oddworld franchise.
Yeah.
But if anyone is familiar with that series, you might be interested to hear what I have to say about it. So there you go.
Yeah. Yep.
I always remember on the 3DS there was a Japanese developer who used to work for Squaresoft, and I only know this because in the game's description he tells you so. And he basically attempted to make procedurally generated Dungeons and Dragons on the 3DS, and that had a similar kind of title to what John said, but I knew it wasn't that when John said it. Fair so enough. I might look that up in the Nintendo
that is your
game
homework now, Gareth. That's it.
Yeah.
But yeah, so just to confirm for our listeners, the people we do see you are listening on a variety of different modes. Just for next week, there's a very good chance that there will not be a podcast, but please do head over onto the YouTube. I don't think there's really any reason for us to be putting an unboxing video as stripping the audio out and putting it up. Yeah,
I love the mental image of someone on Spotify going like yes, but then they're upset because it's like the ASMR of package opening.
Yeah,
I got the
it's got to be a thing.
Oh no! Well, you've got to
the blind boxes.
The blind boxes.
Well,
they were the bane of my life when Toys R Us existed. Yeah. Dad, can I have a Guardians of the Galaxy blind box? Dad, can I have Spider-Man? I at least trained him well, But, it was also like, what's that, £7 for a tiny piece of plastic?
Well, you'll be learning how much these are if you watch the video. Also, you can check out Twitter and Facebook, Roleplay Life news about what's going on next week as well.
Yes, indeed. So, if no one's got any more for anyone, or whatever the saying is, Gareth, you've already done it once, and I've just mangled it for the second time.
Anyone for any more?
Anyone for any more? that
seems
like a no. Yeah, I'll send us both all out. So that is Roleplay Life for whatever today's date is, the 19th. By the way, just a very quick one-liner. Garrett's talking about this game that he was playing, which is
Crown Trick.
Crown Trick. Sorry, I was thinking of the publisher. It only came out Friday.
Yeah.
So that's how quick he's turned this around. So today,
well done, Gareth.
Yeah,
I literally saw it, the advert on Steam. It came into my recommendations and the artwork. So, as I've said to people, I'm just going to quickly. No! I'm just going to say, as soon as something punches me right here, when something punches me here, right in the nostalgia, I'm in.
Okay. You're punching me there, John. What are you doing?
Not on my video.
That is everything from myself. So I shall bid you a good night.
Good night, everybody.
There we go.
Yes. Thank you for listening.
Good night and au revoir. Bye-bye now. Bye.